Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Bible, and if you haven't seen the last video on the last subject, we talked about King Solomon's reign and the mistakes he made, and basically we'll just pick up from where we left off on that when at the end, near the end of Solomon's reign, he was enticed, induced, policy-wise, changing policy because of the many women that he had been with who were of different religions, the concubines and all that, all the women that he was around having sex with, and, obviously there's a moral of the story: don't have marriages or sex with more than one woman, or relationships with more than one woman, or of different religions, because they can turn you around. And basically under Solomon's reign, because of the policy changes, and they let everybody worship whatever they wanted to do. They had all kinds of false god images and statues all over the place, stuff like that, and it led the next generation of Israel towards false god worship, and they weren't worshiping the Lord. So that kind of continued with his son Rehoboam, and when Solomon passed away, Rehoboam took the helms of the kingdom. So this is at a time of peace. There hadn't been much war. There's a lot of riches, materialism, obviously, so during the first few days, and these were critical. Solomon had built the temple. Solomon, had his own palace, and some taxes had to be raised during that. And so basically, the first thing the people of Israel wanted from the new king is the taxes to be lowered. And the problem is, and we're going to get into that here, King Rehoboam, when the people of Israel inquired him, we want these taxes to be lowered. Lower the taxes that Solomon put on us. And basically, this was a consequence that this could end his kingdom pretty much right here. I mean, it doesn't in the end, but that could basically end the kingdom for Rehoboam there. Because the people were getting hurt they will really want the taxes lowered. And so they came to him in an inquiry and complained, and, they gave him 3 days to give a response to it. And so within those 3 days, King Rehoboam called all the counselors, the old men, the wise men of Israel, and, they came and they deliberated on what they should advise, the king on. And they advised him, hey, these people will serve you if you lower the taxes, if you lower the tribute. And that's actually good advice, because, they don't have to build as much anymore, because they already built the temple, already built the palace. And so, essentially, he wanted to get advice from somebody else as well. And so he took his, his friends that he knew, and he was a very young king, obviously, at the time when he took the helm of the reign, and he brought his friends and buddies over, and what they told him was, don't lower the taxes, raise the taxes, and they wanted him to give him a quip, Solomon chastise you with whips. I'm going to chastise you with scorpions, essentially. And he delivered that. He delivered that he was raising the taxes. He delivered that quip. And what happened is, Israel, they were angry. I mean, anybody would be angry. I mean, you have a leader of some country and they do that to you, and you demand something, demand action, that can end a kingdom. That could end a power. And so basically, Israel that day basically split from the house of David, which is, King Rehoboam. And basically, only two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, stayed with Rehoboam, while the other 10 tribes split up. And this was done. If you watched the last video, you would have heard me tell you that there was a consequence to the kingdom when Solomon turned Israel astray to false gods. There was a consequence, and this was the consequence. The house of David was split up from most of Israel, most of the tribes of Israel. They only retained 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. So that was the consequence of the action that Solomon was doing. And his son reigned only 2 tribes, not all 12, the whole country. So, basically, before, basically after, they split, Rehoboam, he was trying to, flex, and so he brought his, the guy that you send out to collect taxes back in the day that, now you just mail in your taxes, but back in the day you had to send, so they send out the tax collector, and he gets stoned. They don't want anything to do with him. Israel wants nothing to do with him. And so they stone him, and basically that sends a message, all right, I'm done. They're off on their own thing. And Israel picks a king, and it is Jeroboam. And I'm actually going to tell you that during the reign of Solomon, toward the end, when God saw all this stuff he was doing and how he's corrupting the country without realizing it, he had a prophet come on to Jeroboam, who God selected to be the next king of Israel when when it breaks off from each other, because that was the consequence. And this prophet told Jeroboam, hey, 10 tribes you're going to have, house of David are going to have 2, because Israel as a whole stopped worshiping me and started worshiping all these false gods and these idols. And so basically he took that, and somebody heard about it, obviously things go around, and Solomon hears about it, and now he wants Jeroboam killed. So they seek out for him, but Jeroboam flees to Egypt, and that's where he is basically for the rest of Solomon's reign. Jeroboam is in Egypt. So he stays there until Solomon's death, and Rehoboam is, the new king, and he comes back. And all this stuff starts to fall into place, and next thing you know, he's the next king of Israel. And now Israel split up between 1 king and 2 king, and 10 tribes for Jeroboam and 2 tribes for Rehoboam. And if you thought, okay, well, God picked, Jeroboam, and if you thought Jeroboam was going to do a good job as king, but unfortunately he too did not do the right thing. That's his problem. He had everything set up, and he just messed it all up. And so, one of the early things he did is he saw that, because back in that time, it wasn't necessarily that nobody believed in the Lord or worshipped God. It's just that they were allowed to do whatever they want. So if they wanted to go and worship Baal or whatever, they could do that, Ashtoreth, all that stuff. So they could worship whatever they wanted, have altars and make their own gods and all these images and fineries and all that, idols and stuff. So they could do all that stuff and all the stuff that they wanted to do. So, Israel as a whole still did the sacrifice to the Lord. They still believed in the Lord. And the sacrifice had to be done, where Rehoboam was. Or in his land, in one of the tribes of Judah or Benjamin, I don't remember where. But the sacrifice had to be done over there, so they had to cross over into the other half of Israel, other kingdom of Israel. And when Jeroboam saw this, he thought, okay, the people got to go and sacrifice to God over in over on the other side, where the other kingdom is. So what, they're going to turn to Rehoboam again, and they're going to slay me. That's his fear. And so what he did is he set up two different golden calves, one in Dan, I don't know where the other one was, and there's a bunch of cities, just like you would say, like Wyoming, or, but he set one up over one place and another place in Israel in his half, and he said, and he announced, in an edict, these are the gods that brought you up out of Egypt. Notice that he says gods. So, if you think that, if you got a little tingle in the air that, oh hey, golden calves, isn't that, didn't Israel do that before? They did. When Moses was up on the mount for like a month or so, the people corrupted themselves and they made two golden calves and said, these are the gods that brought you up out of Egypt. So the same mistake made twice, and basically Jeroboam just, brought all the people and they sacrificed unto those, and everybody's just worshiping false gods, and still people that believe in God, but I'm just saying, it's just engulfed. All this junk is engulfed. And now it's sanctioned by, or well, not sanctioned, that's the wrong word, but now it's endorsed by the government that they should worship the two golden calves. So, that's the problem. It's the corruption and, the policy shift, and all this started because Solomon, all these problems, and you're going to see in the next video more problems that come to Israel, but I'm saying all these problems span from one thing. The King Solomon was enticed by all the wives he had. He had tons of wives, and they were following false gods and other religions and all that. And, he didn't know what he was doing, and he just let everybody in Israel do all these things, and there's altars all over the place, and temples, and all this junk. And that's where the problems shift over the other side, and that's why everything's split up, and so it's a mess. So it wouldn't have happened had he not done that, had he just kept it cool, and that's the moral story here. That's the story here. Don't marry more than one woman. Don't do that. Don't marry somebody that's of a different religion. I mean, you can, but don't be put astray by it. Don't let them turn your kids away from God and turn you away. And, that's another thing. If you're a person of power, you got to listen to the people too, because you saw Rehoboam was put out of place because, well, at least he lost the tribes because he wouldn't listen. So that's another thing. If you're a person of power, of principle, you have to follow what the people want. At least not like the bad stuff, but if they want lower taxes, you gotta lower those taxes. You know what I'm saying? When they want a nice big golden fountain, you gotta raise the taxes. I mean, that's how that. You know what I'm saying? You can't just not listen to people when it's good things like lowering taxes and stuff. But you can't be. That's why I'm saying you gotta figure it out, because a lot of people these days don't really believe in God anymore. They're just kind of and it's kind of a parallel in this generation where we are. We have a lot of material things. God has blessed us with very much things, and we kind of get materialistic. Now it's okay to have things, but it's not okay to have those things make you lose faith, make you think and boast like, I did this, I worked for this, I made this, I earned this. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing humanism and worshiping ourselves and idols and false religions, because a lot of false religions, a lot of that's also about humanism. A lot of that tells you just to worship yourself and objects. And I'm not saying it's bad to have material things. I have a lot of things. Do I particularly worship anything? No, I worship God. I mean, but I'm just saying, there's a kind of parallel because they had a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff right now, and I'm just saying, there's a lot more humanism going around and materialism. I'm just saying, don't lose sight of God, and don't lose faith because of things you see in this world. Because I'm seeing the world's just kind of shifting away from believing God and shifting more toward atheism, and that's just not healthy. It's not good for any society, and that's why I'm telling you read the Bible, and you have to read it. You can't just hear it from somebody saying it. You have to read it, and you'll begin to understand. If you just read the whole thing from beginning to end, you'll be able to understand. And I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and I hope you'll believe in God and Jesus Christ and read the Bible, because it really is important that we have faith in these days, because there's a lot of people that aren't they're just losing faith, and it's just not healthy. And I'm going to let you know, every time in the Bible that Israel lost faith or went after false gods, they had their stuff taken away. Okay? So if you think in these times that things can't be taken away, things can be taken away. So that's what I'm just saying. You got to, and even if, you can be a believer and everything gets taken away from you, it doesn't matter, because nothing in this world is of any real consequence. The only thing that you come in with this world is your faith in God and your soul, and the only thing that you leave in this world is when you leave this world is your faith in God and your soul. So everything else in this world it's fine, but I'm just saying, don't let anything make you lose sight. You have a child and they die, don't blame God for it. Don't blame the person that maybe was drunk and driving for it. Just let it go. You can't lose sight of faith and believing in God, whatever happens. Okay, because in the end, whatever we have in this world is going to be gone. And I'm not saying that it's tragic when someone like your daughter dies or something like that, but Satan will use that to make you lose faith. Whatever. I mean, he'll use whatever, woman, money, but you can have money and you can have woman and all that and not lose faith. You can't. And I say this all the time, especially now we're on this LGBTQ stuff, and I see a lot of people that are LGBTQ don't have faith in God. I don't know why, but don't let anything make you lose sight of having faith in God, because God will forgive you, and God loves you, and you read the Bible and you understand He sent a man in a person in flesh, and He basically is the Son of God, and He died on the cross, and He didn't do anything, but He died on the cross for your forgiveness. So basically, if you read, it's a thing, how a prophet is never accepted in his own place. And Israel is set up, and it was always spoken that there'd be a prophet, and Jesus Christ fulfilled all those prophecies that were written in the Old Testament, and people didn't listen to him, and in fact, they killed him. They hung him on a cross, and they killed him. And, and that was always by design, that was always by plan, because if you read, people back in the day, for atonement of sins, they did sacrifice animals and stuff. But, God wanted mercy, not sacrifice. It says that in the Bible a lot, and that's who basically Jesus is the atonement, the ultimate sacrifice for everybody. Every man that believes in Him, you will be saved. And we're not worshiping a man, we're worshiping God, but He sent someone to basically, be sacrificed And nothing that Jesus said, he never talked about himself. He always talked about God, always. And that's just the one thing, you know. I mean, he never took credit for everything. He always said, you know, God, you know, created all things, and I'm here because he sent me. And that's, you know, he never said anything about, you know, himself. He never called himself great, you know. One time, you know, somebody said, you know, you're a good teacher. I mean, there's none greater than God. He is great. And he said that. And I'm just saying, you know, well, I'm summarizing, but I'm just saying, don't lose faith because you like something that might be against the Bible, because you like, I don't know, furry hentai or whatever the heck. I mean, you can't just drop the whole thing, because you can always change whatever problems you have. You can always change. You do adulteries and stuff, you can always change that. And that can be forgiven and forgotten. Signed, shipped, sealed, gone. And I'm just saying, but people for some reason think that, oh, God's judging me, and people are judging me in the church. Just, I mean, it's a sin to commit adultery and all that stuff, but it's not like you do it and you just, everything you're just shut out. No. You know, and that's the thing, that's the misconception with a lot of people. You have to stop blocking yourself out and just read the book from beginning to end. And they'll, you know, you skip around, but I'm just saying, just read from beginning to end, and you'll see what I'm talking about, what all the people that are Christians are talking about, and Muslims, and you'll start to understand. And anyway, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I certainly do hope you read and believe, because, you know, I've already said it. I mean, I'll say it again. It's just, I don't know, people, it's just things aren't the same these generations, and that's usually how it goes. If you read the Bible, you know, and there's a generation where there's a lot of faith in Israel, and then there's a generation where they start following false gods. I mean, it happens. It's just, you got to keep, that's the main thing. You got to have children, and you got to tell them that, you know, teach them. So that way they teach others in their time, in their generation, because when we don't do that, people start going astray. But there's always going to be people that, you know, bring back, you know, faith, and I think that's kind of the thing we're going through right now, at least in the United States. But I'm just saying, we need to have faith and read and believe in God, because, and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, because we can't be just doing this faithlessness and this atheism, because then that leads to everything else, all the crime, all the sexual immorality, all the problems we face. It just stems from, you know, not having perfect homes, perfect, you know, family homes, safe areas, you know, drugs. You know, if we just have more faith, people will be a lot more wiser, and they're going to keep away from things that are bad. I'm not saying there's not going to be bad things. It is the world. I mean, there's going to be bad things. I mean, I've done bad things, but I've never let my bad things that I do keep me away from, you know, reading the Bible and believing in God. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't let your problems keep you from reading. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and goodbye.